Arlene Stein. She works in the field of environmental sustainability and is the chair of Good Food Media, as well as special project coordinator for Cook It Raw. She's currently the instructor of the Terroir Symposium, Canada's leading symposium for the hospitality industry.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. It's quite an honor to be in the presence of these three experts. That was quite incredible, and I've learned such a great deal. I'm from Toronto, Canada, so it's always great to have a new perspective on food systems issues that you're not necessarily familiar with. I'm a firm believer by sharing our global stories, we get to actually learn a lot more, and we actually get to share best practices in those regions. Today I'm here to talk about, to do a presentation to really kind of knit together the conversations that we've just heard. As you've heard, I've worked in food programs and food events for many years, about 20 years now. My background is actually in hospitality. I worked in restaurants, I worked in the catering department at the University of Toronto, and I've also done work with Environmental Centre on their food program strategy. But the job I love the most is really being a connector of people. As I said, I'm not an expert in food systems, but I am a great expert in bringing people together to share their stories, to network, and to really learn from each other. And most closely related to this symposium is bringing chefs and food producers together. As part of my work at the Environmental Centre, where I worked for 5 years, I actually ran which was one of the largest farmers markets in the city of Toronto. So we had over 80 producers in our summer season, and we just expanded this year to 2 days, which is Saturday and Sunday. So a lot of the work that we did was actually connecting those producers with our chefs within the city of the GTA. So I believe in the power of chefs and farmers working together because I think it's a grassroots approach to creating a more sustainable food system. My work here today, as I explained, is to rationalize the importance that chefs have in that role in supporting a sustainable food system, which, by the way, is not in its infancy. We know that this kind of farm-to-fork movement has been developing, especially in America, for about 20 years, as it is worldwide. But more and more so, the chefs are so important in helping to bring awareness to those systems and also to talk about how small-scale sustainable farms can actually proliferate. So today's theme is chefs as a catalyst for change, and I'd like to change that slightly to read chefs working together with farmers as the arbiters of a sustainable food system. The concept of sustainability as we know it has taken a lot of criticism, as we know in the environmental movement, especially with all the greenwashing that happens. Labels often don't hold any credibility. But as someone who's worked in the environmental sector, I know sustainability has a definition. And it is the ability for something to last indefinitely. So it has three components, which are social, environmental, and economic. And I'm going to propose that through chefs and farmers working together, that they can actually help achieve sustainability in small-scale farming operations. So we understand that our food system is in trouble, and hopefully it goes without saying, especially after all the expertise we did here, that our current industrial model is not working for many reasons. But I believe we gathered here today because we want to support the alternative, which is a more sustainable food system, which includes those small-scale family farmers. And we do know that chefs can play a significant role in helping to support them in their cause. So I think first and foremost, we have to look at a sustainable food system being about community development. So community development defined is a process where community members come together to take collective action and generate solutions to common problems. For a chef, food is your ingredient. It is your tool and it is your medium. Without your ingredients, you couldn't cook. You would have no product to serve a consumer. So it seems natural that you want to protect and support the most valuable components of your work. By extension, it means working with your farmers to produce your food that is tasty, nutritious, and actually provides good value for your customers. So those are your farmers, the fishers, the artisanal food producers, the bread bakers, the cheese producers, the beekeepers for that matter. The ingredients that you provide to your customer are the resources for you to do your work. The better the product, the more you shine, and the more you put a highlight on those producers that are actually growing those fruits and vegetables, fishing the fisheries for you, collecting your eggs. So chefs help support their producers through traceability and accountability, bringing awareness to people who are doing good work in the fields. So something as simple as a chef identifying producers on their menu goes a long way to talking about where the sustainability movement is moving. And a caveat to that we're seeing as part of this greenwashing thing is that it's also important that if the chef is going to put a producer on their menu, that they need to be buying from that producer, thereby really supporting them economically. The biggest way a chef also helps to support a small-scale producer is through economics. So chefs support alternative food systems through economic development by ensuring that farmers have the economic support so they can focus on the growing best possible ingredients for the chefs that prepare their food. And it's really about simple math. So as an example, I know that farmers have varying outlets. They do CSAs, they do farmers markets. In my experience with the farmers that I've worked with in the past, the best way for them to secure economic development is to know that they have a singular source that they can sell to on a regular basis. So as an example, if you're going to a farmer's market, I might spend $80 to $100 a week on my groceries at the farmer's market. A typical household will spend 10 to 12% of their annual income. But a chef in a restaurant spends 25% of his revenues on food systems. So think about if you did that as a multiplication factor, all the small-scale restaurants, if they're working with their local producers, can actually provide a viable economic framework for those farmers. It means that they have a guaranteed source of income as a result. So just as a sheer matter of volume, the chef and the restaurateur have the ability to provide financial backing to a farmer who's looking for a secure outlet for their product, especially if it's negotiated in advance. It's also very difficult for small-scale farmers to work with big distribution companies. And so they need those different economic outlets. So it's one thing to say, well, they can go down to farmers markets. I know farmers like yourself who go 5, 6, 7 farmers markets a week. For some, it's a good enough alternative. For others, it means bringing huge crews in. We were working with an heirloom tomato farmer in Toronto, Southern Ontario actually, and she was doing 5 visits to farmers markets weekly. And they figured out with all the outputs they were putting in, they were actually losing money. So it actually meant that they wanted to scale back. They ended up doing 3 farmers markets, and they started focusing on whole-scale distribution to chefs specifically, because they knew also that's where they could get a little bit more of a premium for their product, but they knew they could also sell everything that they were delivering. Whereas when you're going to a farmer's market, you may bring 100 pounds of tomatoes, and maybe you go home with 20 pounds of those, which then can become waste. So the other piece of it is the environment. So we know that we have yet to convince people that sustainable food systems are an alternative to the industrial system, but we do know it's important for the environment for various reasons, of course, that we've heard today. The state of our farmlands and fisheries are constantly being threatened. We are familiar with those issues. They're on the tip of our tongue. My child can talk about GMOs and Monsanto, soil degradation, flash floods, dust bowls, bee colony collapse. But what do those really mean, and how do they affect how we're actually going to look at a food system into the future? And it's overwhelming. And this is where a lot of us have difficulty making that change. Again, in the environmental sector, we always talked about the idea that there is no one big solution. It's all about incremental change. So you begin making, and also for chefs, how do you begin to make that change in an environment where your customer is constantly pressuring you for ingredients that they want? Shrimp cocktails, exotic dragon fruits, things that don't grow here, never will. So how do you meet their demands? Because often that's a challenge that chefs will talk about. My customers want it. My customers want it. My customers want skate. Well, guess what? When skate becomes completely, extinguished, then we will have to look for an alternative. So why not take on the leadership role of looking for those alternative food sources before they become extinct? So one of the big things that came to my mind, I was traveling in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and as soon as I got out of the airport, there's big signs about the drought in California, something that I've read about vaguely but didn't really understand the implications of. And so talking to a few friends in San Francisco who are working in food systems issues, this is a serious problem. California's running out of water. Australia's been running out of water for 20 years, and nobody talks about that. But part of the problem is that the industrial system that they've created relies on this massive irrigation system. And so I think about it closely because California is actually the breadbasket of Southern Ontario, if you complete that. We get a lot of our baby greens, baby spinach, strawberries, asparagus all year round. A lot of it's coming from California. And so what happens as a chef when you put your money, your eggs, as we say, into those industrial baskets, and then they're no longer able to produce? How does that cost you as a consumer or a chef in terms of the real cost of agriculture that you're producing? But if we bank, I believe, on our local farmers and our local farm systems, and we help them create economic viability, I think that they could support us because they'll be able to provide those ingredients that we're traditionally flying in from around the world. It's a big dream, but I think it is possible. So what is the advantage for you, the chef? Farmers working together? Well, the farmers can grow food for you. You can actually specialty order food. So does everyone know David Kinch, Manresa, Los Gatos? So David Kinch started a program where he exclusively works with his neighboring farm, Love Apple Farms. So the advantage for David, who's a 2 Michelin star restaurant chef, is that he understands from the beginning of the season what he'll be able to grow for the year after. And the farmer themselves, because they get paid in advance and they have a contract, understands what they're able to produce as a result of the money that they're investing into the farm. So it's a singular relationship, and it's a difficult one. It doesn't work for everyone. But I do know, even through relationships that are developed through the farmers that I work at our farmers market, is that chefs can go to them and say, can you grow this specialty bean for me? I'll buy your whole product. Can you, another chef I work with works with a chicken producer that does farm gate. He buys all his chickens every year, and he knows in advance those are going to get bought. So it provides them a level of financial stability. The other advantage to working with your local farmers is that you make new friends and you develop new relationships. And when you develop a relation with your farmer, you really start to understand how your food is grown, what it needs to grow, and what are the challenges of it. One of the big examples, a good friend of mine is a tender fruit producer in the Niagara region. And a few years ago, we had this beautiful winter where we had no winter at all, actually. And then in the middle of March, we had this flash frost, which basically killed most of the apple buds in southern Ontario. Their farm, which is in the Niagara region, lost 80% of its production. And so they knew that going in. And so a farmer, an apple farmer especially, depends on those apples as their core product from September until the next May. It is the source of what they do. And so what they did immediately, because they were very resilient and they were able to, is that working with their chefs, they were able to figure out what they could plant in between the rows of their orchards that would actually then be bought by the chefs, because they'd already developed those extensive relationships. So they were resilient enough to recover, but they didn't have insurance. They didn't have insurance because it doesn't cover half of their production costs anyways. But so it's important when you have those relationships and you understand the fragility of the farming system, that you can work with those farmers to help them recover easily. So the other question you need to ask yourself as well is that when you know your farmer that's producing your food, isn't there an inherent trust and value that you've put into them that you can then relay onto your customer? So you know where your food's coming from, you know it's not being trucked from across the world, you know that there's an equity going into that food and farming, the systems by which that farmer is working with. For me, I want to buy products in general off of people that I know. I want to support my family and friends. I want to live in a community where we all have a healthy, resilient, viable community that is, about relationships and long-term stability for everyone. And the other most important thing about working with your farmer is that you learn new skills. So soil, you passed around the soil today and the compost. Soil is so important, and we're losing it at such a vast rate across this country. That's a whole other conversation, but understanding soil health and soil development, one of the things that I'm doing is working with a lot of fishermen these days, and working with them, and really, it's scary, but uncovering the state of our oceans, the state of our aquaculture, really helps me also make informed decisions about my own personal food economies, and so deciding whether or not I will or will not eat something. So the other way that chefs help support this system working with their farmers is because you are influencers. So the rise of the chef or cook as the authority on food has proliferated thanks to the celebrity chef and has been created through conventional and social media channels. Chefs are huge influencers, and when you make a decision or voice an opinion, people will listen. Think about the fact that Time magazine put Alex Atala, Rene Redzepi, and David Chang on their cover last fall. They called them the gods of food. These are super important people, but as a Jedi will tell you, with power comes great responsibility. And so wouldn't that responsibility to use that power to evoke a small-scale farming sustainable food system? If ingredients are important to you, it's important to use your influence to protect them. So now we all know chefs as ambassadors in a variety of food different areas. Jose Andres, who's here in DC, works with the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves. They support food justice issues. Dan Barber took time, 7 years exactly, to study the agricultural landscape of America in order to publish his authoritative new book, The Third Plate. And of course, there's Alice Waters, considered the mother of the organic food movement in America, who shifted her energy recently to food literacy by helping kids build edible school grounds. So those are just a few examples of the important work that chefs as leaders can do. And I think even if you are not the superstar celebrity chef, you all still have resources that you can use to your advantage to help spread the word, including social media. Social media, Instagram has proliferated the value of anybody's marketing scope. So it's something that you can use. So how do you do it? The skills to take it into action. So you build your community. You host events like this, you gather and convene events like this, and you share resources. Sharing is caring, right? In the hospitality world, we've been afraid for so long to share those resources because we're protected of them. But we can't. We need to actually teach people about the farmers that we're using, teach people about the issues that we have, and hope that they can use those resources to move forward in their own endeavors. So join a group. My friend Lilia, who I'm staying with, who's here on the organizing committee, talked to me about the Chefs Collective. That's, I think, a recent addition to the American food landscape, but it's specifically a group that works to fix our broken food system by engaging chefs in a network that inspires, educates them to change how they source, cook, and serve food. It's a brilliant organization. Everybody should belong to something like that. Slow food, something that helps build your education around the issues that exist. The other important thing, of course, is to build awareness for those farmers that you're using. So visit their farms, meet their families, and start buying their products. Even if their product isn't so great one year, your help in helping them create that economic stability will ensure their long-term proliferation of the products that they're growing. Help your farmer friends become more successful by introducing them to your other chef friends. Nobody does any good by protecting their one chef or one farmer that they don't want to share with anybody else because they want their product exclusively. It helps everybody. It's co-opetition. And host farmer-chef meet and greets. Speed dating for farmers and chefs is how people get to know each other. So build events, build networking communities, and take people and build those relationships. So making a difference in this field, chefs and farmers working together to this grassroots approach of creating an alternative sustainable food system or supporting it because it is existing right now. So it's incremental change. It's one little thing at a time. So think about something you would like to change. Pick an issue that's important to you and that is specific to something that you want to put your energy behind. So what is it? Is it about heirloom varieties? Is it about animal welfare? Is it about ocean health? Is it about the bees? So whatever that issue is, it's one piece at a time. Every year, if you could make it a commitment to making a change in that area, then we could all collectively make a bigger move forward. So remember, I asked you a question, or I was going to ask you a question, but think about why you came here and hopefully figure out how you can use all of the information that you've been given today to collectively think about how you can move forward and make change in this area. And work with your local producers, work with your local suppliers, and help them proliferate too. In that way, I think chefs can and will be the catalyst for supporting a sustainable food system.